started again. Let's see when we get it started again, if it'll start back the queue or not, in the same queue or not. All right, folks, bear with me 1 second. Let's see what happens here. If we're back in the queue or not, if we got it really started back again. All right, okay, I think I've got it back again. I think we're back again. Let's see what it says here for the second queue. Let's go ahead and do live again. All right, it looks like we're back again. Let's see if we're back again. Let's see if we're back again. All right, it looks like I had to requeue. Okay, I think this is going to do it. I think this is going to do it. All right, I think this is going to do it. All right, it seems like we're back, folks. That was some technical difficulties that I don't quite understand in the beginning of the program. Anyhow, we are back, and we are back to say hello to everybody. Those of you, let's wait about 1 minute for the folks to come back onto the queue. Let's wait about 1 minute for folks to come back onto the queue, and I'm pretty sure they will be back. Let's go ahead, and I have to do a couple of shares here before we get started and come right back live. Let's see, let's go ahead and share this real quick, like share to the public and share there. And now we get to share one other place to a group, and I'll be right back with you guys. Okay. And we are back, I believe, in the queue. Sorry for this mishap, folks. It happens every so often. What can I say? All right. So we're back. Bregems. Okay. Now we're back. 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 Okay. We're going to have a great program for you today. Welcome aboard AVQ. Welcome aboard Brige Reloaded, YouTube, and all good now. Yeah, we're all good. I don't know where that delay came from. That is some kind of a glitch inside of the broadcasting software. Paul Fleming, welcome aboard. Breach MCP, all good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and start with the analysis that we got from Mr. Rodden. Analysis says, seeing inflation as an opportunity, corporations are profiting from price hikes. I believe that is the article that I have listed to cover. So I'm not going to read that, that part of it. Reveal top U.S. corporation raising prices on Americans even as profits surge from Michael again. And Dr. Michael Mann, that one we're going to cover in the preamp, guys. Dr. Michael Mann, director of Earth System Science Center of Pennsylvania State University, says 7 minutes into the PBS video, we're taking on the order of 10 meters or over 30 feet of global sea level rise by the end of the century. Egberto, there's a follow-up video for after the show about sea level rise and climate gentrification, which I would recommend for after your show. While I expect that by 2050, there will be over 1 billion climate refugees around the world with nowhere to go. What I didn't expect is that such troubles have already began affecting poor people living in coastal communities. And there are several islands in the ocean as well that sea level has risen so much that the islands are already abandoned. Okay, let's see. Tom C says audio and video looking good now. Thank you, Guy. Michael Ruddin says we are on the same page, Egberto, covering the same news. What happened, Michael, is that you are just somebody who's out there doing the real thing. No, but actually, Michael Ruddin, you actually catch a lot of stuff sometimes that I miss on these different sites. So keep doing that great work. Peggy Lopez, welcome aboard. All right, guys, I have an interview. Let me go ahead and play the interview. And after the interview, we'll go into talking about all these other issues that Michael brought up and that I posted that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and get busy with that interview right now. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Wills, your host. Thank you so kindly for being here with us. As we all know, what's going on right now across the world that everybody's talking about is the Ukraine crisis. The war in Ukraine, a war that very few of us really understand what's going on. Well, luckily today we have somebody from the region now living in the United States, but can help us understand what's going on. Vlad Dibrinsky, thank you so kindly for being here on Politics Done Right.
I'm glad to be here.
Before we get started, Vlad, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us a little bit of context here.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Ukraine. Until 7 years old, I was there. Then from 7 till 10, I lived in Siberia, in Yakutia, which is Far East Russia. Then I came back to Ukraine, and then I went to college there. And then I moved to Boston in the early 90s, and I attended Berklee College of Music. I became a musician. Then I moved to New York City, and since then I lived in the States. So basically, I'm a 30-year-old citizen of America. But I've been also back to Ukraine since 2014, and I opened a music school there called American Music Academy, affiliated with the Berklee College of Music. We did the school there and in Kiev, and I was going back and forth. And then from 2016, I was permanently based there because I married a Ukrainian girl and have a little kid. And we opened another school in two locations. And just now, last December, we came to the States sort of for Christmas, and we were going back on February 26th to Kiev to open a new semester. And the 24th of February, as you know, the Russian rockets started to bombard the whole Ukraine, so we didn't go. So now we're based in Houston.
Now, are you living pretty much in Ukraine? Is that what you're saying? Is that you had moved back to Ukraine and now you've just had to reestablish yourself in the United States?
Yeah, since 2016, I was permanently based in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about Ukrainian history. In America, we are generally geographically challenged and politically challenged as well. So give us a little bit of history, starting a little bit before you got into the Soviet Union, and after the Soviet Union dissolved into back where Ukraine regained its independence.
Right. Ukraine is an ancient sovereign state. The statehood itself was established in the 9th century. It was called Kiev Rus. The language is Ukrainian, and the kings were Ukrainian, but the heritage of the kings were the Swedish Vikings. So, and the country was established from Kiev all the way to Crimea, but Crimea was not called Crimea at that time. It was called a different name, Tavria. And so since then, Ukraine was a big state. So then in the 11th century, Ukraine had become the largest European state on the continent. And the Europeans know, I know the Americans don't know, but the Europeans know that every king of every country had connection to Ukraine. The reason why, because so there was a king Yaroslav, and he had 11 daughters, and all the daughters were married the princes and kings in Europe. And because of that, a lot of Ukrainian heritage, like for example, Queen Elizabeth, so she's related to Ukraine. The main Queen Anna of France is Ukrainian. She's daughter of a prince, and so on and so forth. Belgium, you name it. And then basically that was happening until the 12th century. In 12th century, as you know, the Golden Horde, the Mongol Tartars, they went from Mongolia at that time. Mongolia went to invade the steppes of Ukraine. So that's eastern part of Ukraine. And they went there, and basically Kiev was burned down to the ground. Okay. And Kiev Rus sort of moved to the west. And Lviv was established at that time. And then the city called Ostrog, which is like a spiritual center of Ukraine. And since then, it just sort of like became the second part of existence of independent state. Now, the eastern part was basically destroyed by Mongol Tartars, and that's how Crimea got established, right? And then, I should say this. So there were at that time two parts of Ukraine. So one part of more European, and another part was under the rule of Mongol Tartars. However, the Mongol Tartars were defeated. That's why the Europeans don't speak the Tartar language, right? By Cossacks. Cossacks were Ukrainian fighters that sort of kind of fierce Ukrainian fighters. And in 16th century, they defeated the Tartars basically to the ground. And since then, Ukraine was independent again. I mean, it always was independent, but it wasn't conquered. But then what happened, the Rzeczpospolita, which is the Polish-Lithuanian kingdom, started a war with Ukraine at that time. And by doing so, the Ukrainian forces fought, and they didn't have much winning gains there. And what happened is that the Russian prince at that time, from a new town called Moscow, and the country was called Moscovia, and the citizens were called Moscovites. They asked for help, and they gave help. And since then, so to speak, Ukraine, the eastern part of Ukraine, and Russia were friends, right? And I should say this, that parallel to Ukrainian history, Russia was established in 14th, 15th century by Ivan the Terrible. You probably heard of him. And he was established in Moscow. And then in 17th century, Peter the Great wanted to create an empire out of Russia, as an example of Roman Empire. You know, he was educated, and he was self-proclaimed emperor. And the idea of Russia, he established their idea of foreign policy of Russia, basically. What that meant is ever expansionism to the east, most of all, because they wanted to go to the west, but they didn't have many wars, but they didn't know anything, but to the east. But since the heritage of Russia is Mongol Tartars, they didn't have any problems going to the east because it was the same people. And they went all the way to Yakutia, all the way to Alaska. Now, the Tsarist Russia existed until 1917, as we know it. Now, Ukraine, the western part of Ukraine, was conquered by Polish kingdom in 14th century. The eastern part of Ukraine became part of Russian Empire. And the Russian Empire also had Crimean wars with Turkey, right? And they lost twice Crimea to English. However, English kind of returned it back to Russia for some reason. That's a good question to English people. So, and then after that, Ukraine was independent in 1918 when the revolution started in Russia. In 1918, the Russian government got established, and 1 year it existed as independent Ukraine, full Ukraine, from the east to the west, for 1 year. And then at the end of 2018, the Bolsheviks came, and they were having a larger army, and they defeated the Ukrainians again, right? And then in 1924, after the Civil War, Lenin basically annexed Ukraine as part of Soviet Union. So then Ukraine was sort of like part of Soviet Union all of a sudden. And then in 1991, and by the way, the Western Ukraine is a little bit different history because Western Ukraine was still part of Poland. In 1939, when Hitler invaded Poland, along with Stalin, they divided part of Poland, and that was part of Ukraine as well. So since 1939, Western Ukraine was part of Soviet Union. So that's why Western Ukraine has a little bit more history of independence than the East. Now, and then in 1991, when Soviet Union collapsed, all the republics that Soviet Union had, and there were 15 of them, automatically gained independence, and Ukraine as well. So since 1991, Ukraine finally got its independence, as it was centuries ago. So for 30 years, was independent.
Yeah, let me ask you a question here. Now, when after Ukraine left, after the Soviet Union dissolved, I imagine that even during the times of the Soviet Union, there was a fairly local federal government or not federal, but local state-like government within Ukraine. Is that correct?
Yes, basically, Lenin's idea of Soviet Union was based on the federation per se. He saw how America was established, and he wanted to kind of repeat that. And he wanted to have different cultures inside of this big country, and from all the way from Baltic Sea all the way to Alaska, from the North Pole all the way to the Black Sea, right? So you imagine how big it is. And all the ethnic groups were kind of established in their countries, even though like Ukraine, it's not just Ukrainians who live there. There's a lot of Jews there. There's, Gypsies. I mean, there's a lot of people there. It's just he established this kind of idea that these people can basically have republics in a say, but it's a quasi-republic. Basically, the government of that was elected by Communist Party, that was elected from, I mean, not elected, but appointed from the Moscow office. And it was kind of quasi-independent, but yet at the same time, it was a huge vertical, a very strong vertical from Moscow.
Excellent. Now, what is the issue as far as why did Russia now believe that it should place a whole bunch of guys on your, I mean, military on your border and invade you with an ultimatum? What is the real pretext of what Putin is doing in Ukraine?
Oh, Putin is a Bolshevik, KGB guy. So basically, it's the same as Lenin and Stalin and everybody else. He said it vocally that he wanted to correct mistakes of Lenin and Stalin. For example, Lenin didn't allow religion, so Putin uses religion as their weapon, right? Then, for example, Stalin didn't understand the ethnic groups. He said, "I'll understand the ethnic groups. I'll make sure I'll divide it correctly." So that's what he is. And also vocally, he said that the biggest tragedy of his life is collapse of Soviet Union. So he wanted to reestablish that. However, if you go back to Lenin and Stalin, the idea of Bolsheviks were the world revolution. And the world revolution meant that everybody should be communist, basically, in the world. That's why they reached out all the way to Central America, Cuba, and so on and so forth, China. And people might not know that China was not communist all the time. So, that's the idea of Putin. He's the same Bolshevik guy. He's bringing all the traditions of Bolsheviks back to it. So number one for him agenda is to make sure that Ukrainians as a nation doesn't exist, right? Which is a genocide. He said that. Number two, that's a program minimum, what they say, right? And then the maximum is going east to the territories ex-Soviet Union had. For example, he will say, well, we had Berlin to Soviet Union. Well, there you go. We had obviously Poland and all the Baltic states. We obviously had Romania and everything else also. So that's the program minimum, and then expansion after that. So basically what he's trying to do is going back to where it was in 91, before the collapse, and then going into the new world order, as he said it, which is the Russian civilization order. And he calls it the Russian world. And the Russian civilization order means, first of all, it's ruled by ruble, not by dollar, as economical strategy. And number two, it has the idea of mentality as Russian. Basically, only Russian brings the peace. And the West is evil and all this. It all comes from Bolshevik ideology, right? But the idea is that the problem with Ukraine for him, without Ukraine, he cannot expand anywhere. He's just not. He can't. So he needs to have Black Sea. He needs to have right there inside of Europe. He wants to make sure that he can get his rockets right there where it needs. So Ukraine is very essential for him. And for years and years, he created propaganda to make sure that Russians, and not just in Russian, and also in the West, people are confused and who Ukrainians are. And he was basically, Moscow was the PR agency for Ukraine, right? You never heard from Ukrainian news. You heard it from Russia, right? They tell it what Ukrainians are. So, and that's how they created this monopoly on the news and the structure. And they sit on the UN, the Security Council, they sit in the World Bank. They basically sit in every major point. They stole everything the Soviet Union achieved and adopted to Russia, including the Ukrainian nuclear weapons. So by doing so, they feel very prominent where they are, and they can call the shots, basically.
It's sad. I mean, I imagine that you're not too happy that the Ukrainians gave up their nuclear weapons under the auspices of, I guess, the United States and Great Britain, who thought that was best to do in that time. Turns out that the Ukrainians are turning out to be much better in fighting and supporting what they believe in. It makes you wonder, why would Russia, whose army performs so badly, who is pretty much nothing more than a gas station, believe that they have they could possibly hold any intentions for world domination? Your thoughts on that?
That's a very good question. I'm still baffling myself. If I look at I have a military degree as well, and I kind of was trained as a military officer, and I'm baffling also how they fight and what they do. They don't fight like an army. They fight like a Mongol horde. Honestly, they just destroy everything in their side. They don't care. They don't have strategy in a sense. You know, I think they counted on the fact that Ukrainians will be weak, that Ukrainians will not fight back. I think the Putin's KGB agents told him the wrong story about Ukraine, and I truly believe that because of corruption. He was paying the money to those operatives. They taking the money and buying yachts and did nothing, you know. And then they gave him this information. Oh, Ukrainians are all happy about Russia, and they're not, right? So, and now more than ever, they're united, not just in Ukraine, all over the world, you know. So I think he miscalculated. I think Putin, being a KGB guy and being, the KGBs, they all care about the power and cash. That's all they care about. And he was obsessed with cash and power. And he thought he can bribe anyone and they'll be loyal to him because power is important. But apparently, not just him was obsessed with cash, and nobody cared about power. So they just took the cash and that's it. So I think he miscalculated. But then also, you know, I think a lot of money that Russia gained from selling the energy, which is about, in my calculations, about $115 trillion since 2001, which is a huge amount of money. And that's how Russia became rich, in a sense, right? I mean, it's not that rich country. The economy of Russia is equal to Italy. So it's not that, you know, it's not a major. I can't hear you. Sorry, something happened.
It is smaller than the state of California itself. It is
Right.
sad, but it's not even as large as the state of California. Now, I think now that are the Americans doing enough, is NATO doing enough to help Ukraine right now?
No, NATO does nothing. Zero, absolutely zero. In fact, I think NATO is just an organization for paperwork. That's all it is. And maybe taxing, and that's it. You know, if you look at countries who are NATO countries right now, they independently help in Ukraine. They are all independently helping. And NATO just doesn't do anything. So NATO, for me, even though they were established to defend NATO countries from aggression from Soviet Union, as you remember, right? So Soviet Union now equals Russia, basically. And I'm not seeing any practical involvement from NATO. Zero. They're not even helping.
Are you satisfied with what the United States is doing?
Well, I should say this. I remember how Biden said that back in January that if Putin is doing a minor incursion in Ukraine, that's going to be fine. That phrase was kind of a giveaway that he was not preparing for war, and he was okay for Putin taking chunks of Ukraine, whatever he wanted. So that's my impression of that. Now, since nobody expected, including Biden, that Ukrainians are going to fight, that Zelensky is not going to flee, that we're going to step in and make sure that our land is nobody taking away, he was surprised. That's what I think. And I think he was in an uncomfortable position to sort of shift his old plans for 2022 in foreign policy. And now he's forced to act upon what's going on, you know. And obviously, as the leader of the free of civilized world, you know, he has to put an example, and he has to. Obviously, a little bit too late, but better later than never. So a lot of lives are lost. You know, a lot of children have died. You know, women raped, all of that stuff. You know, and right now it's still not over yet, and who knows how Russia is gonna behave, because they can just put a nuclear bomb in Ukraine. Who knows? Nobody can predict.
Do you still have relatives? I imagine you do have a lot of relatives that are still in Ukraine. Are they in Kyiv, Mariupol, Lviv? Where are they?
Well, my wife's family are in Severodonetsk. Severodonetsk, that's Luhansk region. That's where heavy fighting is. Her mom escaped. Her sister, we got her out right in the very few first days, and we put her to Poland. But her grandmother, she's older, and she is a disabled person. And we tried to get to save her from there, but she said she can't leave because that's her whole life there, and she doesn't want to leave her home, even though there is no home anymore. her
Well, there are no
apartment.
social services either for her, right?
Well, it's not like social services. So there are volunteers in Ukraine all over, and the volunteers going in and helping people who are stuck there. And but it's hard, as you can imagine, because of the shelling and bombing and all that stuff. But you know, she lives with 30 people in the basement of a building. There are some children, and we send her medicine as well. And then the volunteers do the food, and she's refusing to go. And it's not easy to go from Severodonetsk because of the shelling. I mean, to leave Severodonetsk. So she's there. Then I have an uncle who was in Ivano-Frankivsk, and he has a big family. You know, uh, he's a big daddy. He has 7 children, and they all girls and 1 boy. And you know, and when the first rocket landed in Ivano-Frankivsk, the ballistic rocket, his wife couldn't speak for 3 days. She was so shell shocked, and they basically took a car and went all the way to Poland. From Poland, they couldn't find rent, so they went to Croatia. So now they're in Croatia. But you know, there's tons of refugees. As far as my family, that's all I have. But I have friends. You know, I have school friends. I have friends I grew up with.
And your
Uh,
business is bombed, I understand as well, or?
yes. Well, we just got a new rent building with investors because my school was growing and growing. The demand is there. You know, everybody wants to learn jazz and blues. You know, so that's kind of a cool thing. And then and we opened a new building. We were about to start the new semester. I was about to fly on the 26th to with my wife and the child, but it was bombed. So the first rockets that happened the very first day, there was every ballistic rocket hit the airports, and then some civilians areas. So my school was near that area where the rocket is, so it was bombed.
The
So
shrapnel hit got to it.
yeah, so we'll see. You know, I still hope to go back there one day, but not now, obviously.
I am pretty sure you will. Let me just say that I think it is interesting that what is happening now, where we're heading. So my next question is, do you think that absent Putin going either nuclear or with let's say chemical weapons, that you can actually win this thing in the near term?
Well, first of all, he already used chemical weapons 3 times. He
Okay.
already.
I
That's,
heard reports, but I don't know if it was ever confirmed.
yes, yes, and he uses all the time the phosphor bombs. Phosphor bombs also chemical weapons, right? So he's used that. As far as the nuclear, you know, the hinting. You know, recently I just looked at the news and Russian news. I looked at the Russian news because I want to know what they think. And the Ministry of how do you call it? The Ministry of Extraordinary Events. That's their ministry. They put an information for the public and saying we expect that NATO will retaliate a nuclear bomb. That's what they said, a nuclear bomb on the 24th of April. So you should be prepared. Da, 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 da. Then they took this off. So they're playing with that idea. So I think they're playing with that idea very much because Putin is a KGB guy. As a KGB guy, he wants to make sure that the Russian public is happy about the new victory over fascism and Nazi, as they say, right? And that's on 9th of May. So he needs to kind of repeat himself as a big, you know, winner of that. And he needs to win something. So far, he didn't win anything.
Well, unfortunately, given the prevailing wind to be depending on where he uses a bomb in Ukraine, the blowover is going to go right over his own people in Russia. So that would be an interesting thing for him to do.
He already did this. For example, he in Severodonetsk, he blew up a chemical factory, a huge one, chemical factory. You probably saw the pictures, huge kind of red clouds into the sky. All the wind went straight to Russia.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. The prevailing winds is to Russia, and he hurts his own people. Not a very smart man, just a whatever. Anyhow, I understand that you are trying to raise monies and you're having events to support the people in Ukraine. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, about several days after the invasion, my wife and I, we thought, how are we going to fight? First reaction was, hey, you know what? I'll go fight. I'm a man. I'll go fight. But then we have a little kid, and then we talked about it, and I can't do it. And we decided to help however we want. And then by chance, we got an email from a girl who asked me for help. I'm like, well, so what do you want? And she's like, well, I have no money for diapers for my kid. And that started kind of an idea, the whole thing. I'm like, well, let's focus on that. And then at first, Lviv was a huge amount of refugees, and they didn't know where to go. So we started talking to them, and then we realized it's a big problem because, first of all, nobody was prepared for this, as I said. Number two, the Red Cross didn't help inside of Ukraine; they just helped outside. And even though Red Cross, you have to file an application, and then maybe in 2 weeks they'll give you some food and maybe temporary housing. Temporary housing means kind of a gym and school somewhere. So it's not really housing; it's just a shelter. And then when we talk to these women, they're very shy, and imagine you live in your life, you go to work, you have your car, apartment, house, whatever it is, and then all of a sudden you have nothing, and then you're running for life, and you have no idea what's next.
Shameful.
Right. So we decided, let's make a fund. And then a friend of mine who lives in Louisiana, he said, well, there's a site called GoFundMe. And I went to them and I sent them a message. We talked. I said, well, that's what I want to do. Because they're vetting a lot of scammers. Apparently, GoFundMe was scammed a year or 2 years ago. I don't know. And so they were trying to interview me. So we talked. And then they said, okay. And the idea of the fund is very unique because we send in cash. That's all we do. We're not sending clothes or food or anything like that. First of all, NGOs, that's all they do. Every NGO, they send clothes, food, and give shelter. That's all they do. But they don't do the needs would need it. For example, a woman say, well, like she's in Poland, like yesterday. This is a fresh one. She's in Poland. She went there on the March 10th. So that's already like a month, right? And she's living in the hostel with the same women with kids in one room, 6 women, and I don't know how many kids because she had 2. So in one room in hostel. And that's all they have. They don't have the documents yet because it's a huge line in Poland to get any documents. And then she applied for Red Cross. She didn't hear back from them yet.
They need money. You're absolutely right. What they need is money.
So how are they going to survive? So and we basically whatever we get the money, we send it, and they buy baby stuff. Basically, like I have a baby, I know how hard it is, So and it's every day. So so that's what we do. The same thing in Ukraine, for example. Some women never left, right? And they staying where they staying, and they so there was one woman also, she had about 7 children, adopted 2 and 5 her own, with her husband. But her husband is a disabled person. She lost her job, obviously. And then she's in the suburb of Kiev, near Bucha, but not in Bucha, near Bucha. And there was nowhere she can get away because it was all surrounded by Russian soldiers. So we thought, how are we going to help? And there was a pharmacy there in that village, and then plus a grocery store. And so what we did, we found out the ability to send through MoneyGram directly to her card, because apparently her bank accepted the MoneyGram straight to her card. And that way, it was the only way to make sure that she eats with kids, And there's tons of these things, tons of it. We helped, I don't know, I have like 30 something families, and not just with cash. We also help with volunteers. For example, some woman, like she wrote to me from Kherson, and Kherson is occupied, as you know. And she said that she has no money, all of that stuff, and obviously the volunteers cannot give her because it's occupied. So I called my volunteers friends, and they Protestants, so they kind of snuck in to her son and gave her the packets of food. So that was kind of interesting, kind of operation we did. So there's a lot of that. The most
Is there a way to provide you guys some help with what you're doing? I imagine one of the producers told me that you were doing a fundraiser or something like that for Kiev.
I'm going to Los Angeles tomorrow, and we're going to do with a bunch of other artists, including daughter of Tony Bennett, Antonia Bennett, and then Mira Homik. She is a famous violinist, and I'm a blues guitarist, jazz and blues guitarist. So we're going to do a fundraising kind of concert, a private concert, to raise the money and to the fund and send it over. I have I would say about 15 approved families for help right now. Why I'm saying approved, because we interview each of the families,
Right.
because some, you know, I can help
And
otherwise.
there's always fraud. There's always fraud. So I mean, yeah, you make sure.
Right.
Well, let me tell you, we're close on time now. Vlad, why don't you give us a closing message that you'd like to leave with our audience?
Well, you have to realize, guys, that there shouldn't be any confusion anymore. There's a sovereign country with independent people got attacked by an aggression of Russia. Nobody attacked Russia. No one attacked Russia. Nobody attacked Russian people in Ukraine. Imagine Kyiv is a Russian-speaking, Kharkiv is a Russian-speaking, Kherson is a Russian-speaking, Bucha is Russian-speaking. So everything, everything you hear as a confusion is made by KGB propaganda in order to win your minds, to not give help, and that Russia will do its genocide. So you have to realize that there is no neutrality anymore. You're either with a civilized world or you're not civilized. It's just what it is. And you have to be part of the civilized, no matter what.
Vlad Dibrinsky, thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right, and I wish you well.
Thank you.
I'm Egberto Willis, as host of Politics Done Right, a progressive radio media show on Pacifica Network's KPFT 90.1 FM Houston that engages all ideologies. I found that our political angst isn't mostly ideological. There is a well-designed effort by many in power to control us. If we are at each other's throats, we are less likely to demand our economic and local wishes. In that light, I wrote 3 books. I wrote the first one titled, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, to describe the entire economy in a manner we can all understand. It highlights why it was designed to pilfer most as it empowers a few, the chosen. The second book, titled, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, take it to the next level. After understanding how the system pilfers, it is incumbent that we can speak to our peers to empower a change. The third book, How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, gives us a place to land. After learning about our economy that is dysfunctional for most and learning how to engage the other side, we point out what would make an economy that works for all. Each book stands on its own, but together they provide the full picture. Please consider getting one or more. You will undoubtedly learn, be entertained, and help us continue the mission with our blogs, articles, videos, and books. I'm Egberto Willis, as host of Politics.
Absolutely so, folks. And you can get the books at politicsdoneright.com. Maybe if I can get it here, I'll be able to put it in here. politicsdoneright.com/book. Where is it, guys? There we go. politicsdoneright.com/books. Well, for some reason, I can't get the link in, but please go ahead and consider getting the books at politicsdoneright.com/books. politicsdoneright.com/books. Maybe it'll work now, and we'll see if it works now. Paste. There you go. politicsdoneright.com/books. I just put it into the feed there. You can also support us by clicking that join button on YouTube. Please consider clicking that join button on YouTube. And let's see if you'll go ahead and let's see if you're not on YouTube, you can also help us by I did the book again. You can also do it by going to politicsandright.com/YouTube, politicsandright.com/YouTube, and I am getting that as we speak, politicsandright.com/paste YouTube. But the best way to support us is via PayPal, politicsandright.com/PayPal. I'm doing this the old-fashioned way since the keyboard doesn't want to behave. Politicsandright.com. You know what? It's one of these triple keyboards that can control 3 computers at the same time. Actually, supposedly 4 computers at the same time. All right, let's see what else we have here today. Now we want to start to discuss. Let's see if the keyboard, it came back. All right, what we want to discuss today. The all-encompassing way to support us, politicsdoneright.com/support, politicsdoneright.com/support, and please visit our store, politicsdoneright.com/store, politicsdoneright.com/store. I want to put something on the screen for you. It's an article that I wanted to discuss today, and it was also the article that Brother Rudnin, it seems like good minds think alike, he brought to the fold earlier at the start of the program. And I think it is important, and I'm going to tell you why I think it is important, folks. Because as it turns out right now, the plutocracy, the mainstream media, would have you believe that this inflation stuff is inevitable. But it's not only that it's inevitable, they are about to crash the economy to mitigate the inflation. And I want you guys to understand something. First of all, I have the article on the screen. I also have the article in a blog. You can read that article on your own. But the gist of the article is that corporations are taking advantage of the pandemic, the supply chain problem, and all these issues. What I want you to do is read that article after the show, but I want to talk to you directly as far as how things work and what you can do, or what we must, not what you can do, what we must do to mitigate this. The first thing, because for all of you that are here right now, the first thing that I got to tell you is you cannot, in the next cycle, vote for any Republican candidate because they are all neoliberal or to the right of neoliberalism. We'll go into that in a little bit. Secondly, in your primaries, if you have a choice between a progressive Democrat and a neoliberal Democrat, the progressive Democrat. Let's give an example. In Pennsylvania, Fetterman is running against, I don't remember the name of the centrist guy. Fetterman is ahead because he has policies that people want. Fetterman must be the candidate in Pennsylvania, and Fetterman must be the senator out of Pennsylvania in 2022. That I want to get those out of the way for all those people that are listening right now. So here, the marching orders that you have to give not only to yourself but to all the people you encounter, and we're going to go through the mechanics as to why I'm giving those marching orders. And in Texas, it must be Beto O'Rourke. In Texas, it must be Mike Collier as lieutenant governor. He will be the most powerful person in Texas. And by the way, he is my neighbor. But he will be the most powerful person. He's a down-to-earth, regular guy, former oil guy, but it's a good guy. He's not very progressive like I am, but he's a good, progressive, leaning person. So replacing Dan Patrick should be Mike Collier, and replacing the crook that we have for governor should be our good old Beto O'Rourke. Now, why am I telling you these guys? And I can go to California and start naming people from state to state to state to state. What's going on here? First and foremost, we need progressive for this reason. The reason they are about to put our economy into a recession, the Federal Reserve is about to do it. Why? Because we have reached the stage where people are saying, I will not work for peanuts. I will not work for peanuts, so wages are going to keep going up. As corporations can't find people to work, they will have to pay them more, and then that will create less profit for the corporations or larger inflation. What have the corporations chosen so far? High inflation. Without the commensurate wage increase. They've increased wages, but not commensurate with the wage inflation. If you read the article, you see that net profits are up 49%, while wages are up just 1.6%. Okay? Let's qualify all of this. So what are they intending to do? They want to mitigate inflation. But who is causing inflation? Is inflation being caused by a shortage? No. Is inflation being caused because we don't have enough oil? No. Is inflation being are we getting inflation because it is costing you more to grow a bushel of corn? Not quite. It's a bit more, but not quite. Okay? We have inflation because the businesses have an excuse to say, I am raising prices because. Remember, if people don't want to pay a certain price, the price cannot go up. But what we've done with the stimulus program and what we've done by demanding higher wages, it means that we have in everybody's pockets more money. There are two things that can be done with that money. If the corporations decided to be humane, not following the actual capitalist mantra, which, as Dr. Richard Wolff explained, is whatever the market will bear. And remember that how much can you pay for something in a market? The amount of wages you make, the amount of savings you have, plus the amount of credit you have. And after that is gone, the prices will have to collapse because, again, there's no money chasing after goods. But corporations have the choice. They have the choice of raising prices or not. Again, and not only do they have the choice of raising prices or not, because remember, with people having more money, it gives them the wherewithal to put more money into savings, to put more money into areas that build their own wealth for the next time around. But what corporations are telling you today is that we are not going to afford you the ability to be independent and become more wealthy, because the extra cash that you have gotten from the stimulus, the extra cash that you have gotten from wage increases, we're going to take it back from you with something called inflation. And if then that inflation becomes a cascading effect, where we now are going to see people say, well, look, I'm not making enough, so I need more wages. If the cascading effect starts to occur, that would mean people would go back for more wages, right? That's what it would mean. But they're not going to do that. They prefer to crash the economy. Let's explain. Wow, I just turned back to the page, and the last message I have is one from Eric Hayes. Amazing. Stimulus not needed if you have higher wages and great economic opportunities, right as it floods the economy. You see, that is slave thinking. Here's what he said, because that fits into exactly what I'm saying. What Eric Hayes just said fits into exactly what I'm saying. Listen to what he says. Stimulus is not needed if you have higher wages and great economic opportunity, right? As it floods the economy with too much money. Wrong. If I have stimulus, I'm putting money into the economy. If I am working, if I get a higher wage, I'm putting more money into the economy. A dollar doesn't know from whence it comes. What the stimulus also does is it forces private sector to increase wages because people no longer have to chase after depressed wages, after slave labor. And it worked. The stimulus worked. The stimulus took a whole lot of people out of poverty, and it allowed people to hand back until employers went ahead and had to pay more. It was a automatic wage increase without having to have in the law the minimum wage is going to be $15 and indexed to inflation. So it worked. But the corporatocracy does not have a backstop. And that's the failure of capitalism, as Dr. Richard Wolff would tell you. The price of a product is whatever the market will bear. Okay? So therefore, if there's not, first of all, too much money, otherwise, why is Fed pulling back? They're pulling back because they want to crash the economy. They need to crash the economy to stop people from getting higher wages, which then causes these thugs to put out more cash. I mean, to increase inflation. It is simple. It's arithmetic. It's mathematics. And it is a slave mentality to give the corporations a break. It's Munchausen what is it? Syndrome. You know what that syndrome where you go to the person. Come on, help me out, guys. AVQ, thanks for being here. That syndrome that you have, that you give people, you make no sense. Why is government crashing it's not the government crashing the economy. The government is making sure that the wage increases stop so that inflation, because remember, if people have more money, the thugs in suits, capitalists, are going to take it away from you in the form of what? Inflation. In other words, a loaf of bread doesn't cost any more to make, but if you have more money, I can increase the price and I'm going to still sell it. So why not increase the price if I can still sell it? Study economics under a capitalist system and you'll understand what I'm talking about. So folks, I need to repeat myself here before we go because it's imperative, it is important. You cannot, if you care about your personal economy, if you care about your kids, if you care about your older folk that's going to be needing care anytime soon, if you care about humanity, and I'm not saying this lightly, I would not say this if I did not mean it and if I couldn't prove it. A Republican vote this year is a negative vote in two regards. Anti-democratic vote, number one, and number two, anti-economic vote for the average person. Punto y final. If you vote Republican and you are in the middle class, you are destroying your personal economy, your own economic system, your own financial well-being. If you vote Republican, you are also risking a permanent destruction of our current form of democracy. And if you vote neoliberal, meaning some Democrats as well, what you will be doing is supporting economic policies like we have today, where the corporations are taking back Stockholm Syndrome. Thank you, Rose. Every corporation is saying, I am there to take your money because you have it. I won't allow you the choice of throwing it into the bank because you have more money, I'll increase the price of the bread. You have more money, I'll increase the price of steaks. You have more money, I'll increase the price of all these things. Now, people can say, well, just don't buy. One of the reasons I'm for nationalizing certain industries is because that is how we solve this problem. We don't buy, but there are certain things we have to buy. Gasoline, electricity, and these other things. Nationalize those particular industries that we must have. And then for all the other things, clothing and all that kind of stuff that we can do without, that can be free enterprise and into its own system. Because right now, folks, we are at the behest of the corporate class, and we pay for it. And you don't have to listen to what I say. You just have to look at the numbers. You just have to look at where our money goes and who gets all the money that we spend. Even in the pandemic, the billionaires got wealthier as people, well, the stimulus helped a lot of poor people, but of course, Joe Manchin, the neoliberal, with others, decided to do what? To sink the rest of us. Time is up on me. I got another meeting right now at 5 o'clock, so I really have to go early today. But what I'd like to say is thank you so kindly for being a part of the show today. And we'll be back tomorrow talking more truth. And I hope you listen. And I hope you ask questions. I hope you do. Because I'm ready to answer. Whenever I tell you, do not vote Republican or neoliberal for your own existence, your good existence, that is. Please know that I'm not saying this just for the sake of saying it. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.